Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. Republicans expressing discontent over the direction of debt ceiling negotiations. With the White House, NTD's Melina Wisecup has more on why the high-stakes negotiations have now hit a road bump.
Debt ceiling negotiations are proving to be a challenging task as the White House is forced to work with House Republicans on budget mechanisms in exchange for raising the nation's $31.4 trillion debt cap. Speaker McCarthy telling reporters today that those negotiations are at a standstill because the two parties are still in disagreement over next year's spending levels.
I could see the path. The White House is just, look, we can't be spending more money next year. We have to spend less than we spent the year before. It's pretty easy.
Now, Republicans aim to return to the spending levels of 2022, which means cuts would be necessary. The White House admitted that these talks will be difficult because of the differences between the two parties on next year's budget. I recently asked Democrat leader Hakeem Jeffries if there's anything in that Republican plan that Democrats would be willing to accept, such as rescinding that unspent COVID money. Here's how he responded.
We can have a conversation about the budget, appropriations, spending, revenue. So I don't want to get out ahead of the White House in terms of the ongoing negotiations.
And this is a similar message that I got from Senate Leader Chuck Schumer earlier this week when he left that White House meeting, although he has since emphasized the need for bipartisan cooperation. And this strikes a totally different tone than what he was previously messaging. Now, this change in messaging is why Congressman Chip Roy says that the GOP should be more encouraged to hold the line.
Well, right. This is what happens when you actually hold the line and fight. Okay, this is what we're trying to remind our Republican colleagues. They said 3 months ago, we're not doing anything, right? You remember that? Remember when they said, oh, we're only going to do a clean debt ceiling increase. We're not going to sit down with you guys. This is crazy. Now what are they doing? They're sitting down because, yes, of course they are. They have an obligation to do so. What are they going to offer me to buy another year of debt ceiling? That's what I want to know. Are they going to pass H.R. 2? Tell you what, let's put H.R. 2 in the deal, and I'll give them another year.
But there's not a whole lot of time to test these waters. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen recently said that agency officials are not confident that they can continue paying the nation's bills past June 1st, which would lead to an economic catastrophe. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
Our next story is from the Pentagon, which says it accidentally overvalued U.S. military aid to Ukraine by roughly $3 billion. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the unusually high dollar amount error.
Pentagon Deputy Press Secretary Sabrina Singh said, during our regular oversight process of presidential drawdown packages, the department discovered inconsistencies in equipment valuation for Ukraine. Singh said the Pentagon took some military equipment sent to Ukraine from existing equipment stocks. It later used the new purchase price value for the equipment when estimating the value. The Defense Department did not state when the accounting error was discovered, nor did it provide further details as to exactly which weapons had been mistakenly overvalued. The mistake means that the Biden administration may be able to delay asking Congress to authorize more aid for Ukraine. That will no doubt be welcomed by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky ahead of Ukraine's much-anticipated counteroffensive. The Biden administration announced on May 9th that it is sending a military aid package worth over $1 billion to the war-torn country. This to help bolster its air defenses and sustain its artillery ammunition needs. The United States has sent about $37 billion to Ukraine since the start of Russia's invasion in February 2022. Lawmakers have raised concerns regarding the growing aid to the country and called for increased oversight. Representative Matt Gaetz called out the Biden administration earlier this year for funding he says would allow pensions and social support to be paid to Ukrainians.
Help me understand how U.S. taxpayers paying for pensions in Ukraine is a good idea for our country.
Gaetz also criticized the reports of corruption in Ukraine.
Infrastructure minister arrested for stealing $400,000. Deputy head of Zelensky's office can't explain where the sports cars came from, so he had to resign. Deputy defense minister resigned over contracting corruption.
The accounting error means that there is still over $5 billion in funding available for Ukraine, far more than even the largest single package provided to the war-torn country. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And now joining us to discuss the war in Ukraine, we have former National Security Advisor General Michael Flynn. He'll share with us his perspective on U.S. weapons supplies to Ukraine, as well as the Durham report. General Michael Flynn, thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate having me on, Steve, and it was good seeing you last week when you were down here too, so thanks.
Of course. General, the Pentagon, has overestimated the value of ammunition, missiles, and other equipment that it sent to Ukraine by roughly $3 billion. That's billion. A $3 billion oversight, is this normal in the Pentagon? Help us put this into perspective.
Yeah, so, the Pentagon always overestimates everything. I don't care whether it's food, ammunition, people, battlefield operations, battlefield casualties. They always overestimate. In this case, because of the scrutiny that we have by the American people right now on everything going on from this government, particularly everything going on over in the Ukraine, they should have done a far better job before they actually put the data together. One of the things that is, that the Pentagon is should be known for is scrutiny and like a level of detail in the minutia level that to be as precise as they can possibly be. When you're talking about 3 billion with a B, like you said, that's an extraordinary oversight, and it's something that should not have occurred. If it was 3 million, maybe even 30 million, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But 3 billion, that kind of money, when you break it down to the American people are they're livid about $170 billion going over to Ukraine, and God knows where it's going. And it doesn't look like things are going well in the war over there. So $3 billion oversight. And so now it's like, well, where is it? So is there going to be an investigation? And I'm sure there will be. And then we'll never hear anything else about it. And come to find out, it'll be one of those dollar amounts that somebody basically walked away with. One of the things that I will remind people of, Steve, is that in Afghanistan, we spent more money in Afghanistan than we spent on the entirety for the Marshall Plan to recover all of Europe after World War II in today's dollars. Okay, so we spent somewhere in excess of $5 trillion. So in that kind of money, we didn't spend that much money to rebuild all of Europe after the end of World War II, something called the Marshall Plan. So the Pentagon has a lot of soul searching to do to figure out what it is that they need to reassess in terms of how much money we're spending. And when it comes to things like ammunition, that's even worse. Because it's for that example, that's even worse.
And General, to your point, I think one line of thinking is the fact that, as you said, Ukraine doesn't seem to be doing too well right now, and they may have been kind of nursing what they already had, not knowing that they had this additional funding, thereby, maybe losing certain battles. We don't have much more time on this topic. Feel free to comment on it, but I also want to get your thoughts on, information's coming out fast and furious all over the place in the news cycle between the Durham report, the 3 FBI whistleblowers on the Hill yesterday, not to mention the misinformation coming out on these topics. This is all interconnected. Where should we be looking? Help us see through the fog with this as well.
That's a great question, and I appreciate you asking me that question. I think it's super important. This administration and the media are going to try to distract us with things that are not that they don't want us to know that much about, like the whistleblowers, the Durham report. I mean, the Durham report, we spent 4 years of our lives being beaten over the head about Russia. And now, so they're going to shift it. The message is going to be shifted. What people need to really stay focused on is this deep level of corruption in our federal government, particularly starting in the White House. So this new revelation that just came out yesterday by Peter Schweitzer with a phone number and an actual device that Joe Biden used while he was the vice president. Okay, so that is new information. Peter Schweitzer broke that on Blaze TV yesterday, and I would tell you that the corruption that these 3 whistleblowers are speaking to, as well as what the Durham report, we need to focus on that. We have got to fix these problems. We should, it's not that I care less about the humanity and the human problems that are happening over in Eastern Europe, but that's Europe's problem right now. America, we have a huge, huge problem with something called corruption and criminal behavior at the highest levels of our government, to include inside the White House and definitely in the Department of Justice and in the FBI, as well as other elements of our intel community. That's where we need to laser focus and stay on. We cannot give up on that. And on my thing, I'm kind of with where some members of Congress are. I actually think that they need to draw up impeachment proceedings on President Biden immediately.
General Michael Flynn, as always, appreciate your perspective. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Good to see you again.
You too. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.